Al Pacino doesn't just hold guns in movies, he transforms them into extensions of rage, paranoia, and survival that defined American crime cinema across 4 decades. While other actors fumble with Hollywood props, Pacino wielded authentic firearms from Serpico's betrayed idealism to Tony Montana's cocaine-fueled apocalypse, creating the most intense gunfighter Hollywood has ever seen. Hit subscribe right now because we're counting down 10 legendary weapons that most gun enthusiasts have never properly analyzed, revealing how Pacino's strategic weapon choices weren't selected by prop masters but were deliberate decisions that exposed raw character psychology through cold steel and hot lead. Number 10. Smith & Wesson 36. The Betrayed Idealist, Serpico, 1973. We have the gun that represents everything tragic about honest cops and corrupt systems. Frank Serpico's Smith & Wesson model. 36 isn't just a backup weapon, it's the symbol of a man who discovered that survival in the NYPD meant compromising the values that made him a cop in the first place. In Serpico, Al Pacino plays Frank Serpico, a New York City police officer who refuses to take bribes in a department drowning in corruption. The Smith & Wesson model. 36 he carries represents the department's official backup weapon, but Pacino's handling reveals a man who trusts his snub-nosed revolver more than he trusts his fellow officers.
Goodbye, Frank.
The Model 36. Chief Special features a .38 special chambering that fires a 158-grain bullet at 770 feet per second through its 1.875-inch barrel, delivering 208 foot-pounds of stopping power. Weighing just 19 ounces with a 5-round capacity, this compact revolver was designed specifically for plainclothes detectives who needed concealable firepower. Here's what most viewers missed about this weapon choice. The Model 36 was introduced in 1950 as Smith & Wesson's first J-frame revolver, specifically designed for the growing market of plainclothes officers. Its compact size made it perfect for undercover work, but its limited capacity meant you needed to make every shot count. There was no spray and pray with 5 rounds. Pacino's Serpico carries this revolver because he's a cop who operates alone. The Chief Special's reliability under stress made it the trusted backup for officers who couldn't depend on their partners. When everyone around you is corrupt, mechanical simplicity becomes survival. The double-action trigger allowed fast defensive shooting, while the exposed hammer permitted single-action precision when time allowed careful aim. The tragedy of Serpico's Model 36 is that it represents institutional compromise. The NYPD issued these weapons not because they were the best defensive tools, but because they were small enough to hide. Serpico's idealism couldn't be hidden, which is why the weapon ultimately couldn't save him from the bullet that ended his career. Original Smith & Wesson Model 36 revolvers from the 1970s era sell for $400 to $700 depending on condition, while new production models run $550 to $750, making this one of the most affordable pieces of cinema history you can actually own. Number 9. Colt Detective Special, The Desperate Amateur, Dog Day. Afternoon, 1975. At number 9, we have the weapon that proves desperation makes terrible tactical decisions. Sonny Wartsik's Colt Detective Special in Dog Day Afternoon represents everything wrong about amateurs playing criminal. This isn't a professional's choice, it's a desperate man's panic buy. Dog Day Afternoon casts Pacino as Sonny Wartsik, a man attempting to rob a bank to pay for his partner's gender reassignment surgery. The Colt Detective Special he carries tells you everything about his preparation. This was the gun he could afford, not the gun he needed. The Detective Special features a .38 special, chambering that fires that same 158-grain bullet at 750 feet per second through its 2-inch barrel, delivering 197 foot-pounds of energy. And weighing 21 ounces with a 6-round capacity, this revolver represented Colt's answer to the Smith & Wesson Chief Special. But here's the critical difference that reveals Sonny's psychology. The Detective Special cost more than the Model 36, but offered only marginal improvements. The 6th round provided 1 extra shot, but the slightly longer barrel added bulk without significantly increasing velocity. Sonny bought the Colt because of name recognition, not tactical superiority. Pacino's handling of this weapon is brilliant. Watch his grip in the bank scenes. He holds the detective special like a prop, not a tool. The gun waves around during negotiations, the muzzle discipline is non-existent, and his finger stays on the trigger even when he's not actively threatening anyone. This isn't a trained shooter. This is a desperate amateur who watched too many movies. The Colt Detective Special was introduced in 1927 and remained in production until 1995, with over 3 million manufactured. It became Hollywood's favorite snub-nosed revolver because the Colt name carried more prestige than Smith & Wesson, even when the performance was nearly identical. The weapon's presence in Dog Day Afternoon creates tension not through lethality, but through incompetence. Every time Sonny waves that detective special, audiences fear an accidental discharge more than an intentional shooting. The gun becomes a symbol of how quickly desperation turns ordinary people into dangerous threats. Original Colt detective specials from the 1970s command $500 to $900 at auction, while earlier models can fetch over $1,500 depending on condition and generation. The weapon represents affordable collectability combined with significant cinema history. Number 8. Beretta 92 F, The Reluctant Warrior, Carlito's Way, 1993. Number 8 takes us to the weapon that represents impossible redemption. Carlito Brigante's Beretta 92F in Carlito's Way isn't just a sidearm. It's the physical manifestation of a man trying to escape his past, while knowing the past never lets you go. Carlito's Way follows Pacino as Carlito Brigante, a Puerto Rican drug dealer trying to go straight after serving time. The Beretta 92F he reluctantly carries represents the compromise between staying clean and staying alive. This wasn't the gun of his criminal past, but it became the gun of his impossible future.
Everybody's pocket big time. He was big.
Ha! The Beretta 92EF features a 9mm parabellum chambering that fires a 115-grain bullet at 1,250 feet per second through its 4.9-inch barrel, delivering 399 foot-pounds of stopping power. Weighing 2.1 pounds with a 15-round magazine capacity, this Italian-designed pistol represented the modern evolution of combat handguns. Here's what separated the 92F from everything that came before it. The double-stack magazine provided 15 rounds plus 1 in the chamber, giving Carlito 3 times the capacity of his enemy's revolvers. The open slide design improved reliability, while the ambidextrous controls allowed operation regardless of shooting position. This was professional firepower in the hands of a man trying to be anything but professional. Pacino's Carlito carries the Beretta with visible reluctance. Watch his body language when he picks it up. The gun represents everything he's trying to escape, but survival in his world demands compromise. The 92F wasn't the most powerful handgun available, but its reliability and capacity made it the pragmatic choice for a man who knew trouble would find him eventually. The Beretta 92F gained legendary status when the US military adopted it as the M9 in 1985, replacing the 70-year reign of the M1911A1. The military contract validated the design's reliability under the most demanding conditions, making it the choice for professionals worldwide. In Carlito's Way, the weapon becomes a tragic symbol. Every time Carlito chambers around, he's acknowledging that redemption is impossible. The mechanical precision of the Beretta's operation mirrors Carlito's calculated attempts to escape his past. But just like the inevitable cycle of the pistol's action, the past always comes back around. Modern Beretta 92 F pistols sell for $550 to $750 new, while the military M9 versions command premium prices. Original Italian-made models from the 1980s era bring $700 to $1,000 depending on condition. Number 7. Colt M1911, the family weapon, The Godfather, 1972. At number 7, we have the weapon that started Al Pacino's journey into screen violence. Michael Corleone's Colt M1911. A 1 in The Godfather represents the moment an innocent man transforms into a killer. This wasn't just a gun, it was the instrument of Michael's corruption. The Godfather presents Pacino as Michael Corleone, a war hero trying to stay separate from his family's criminal empire. The Colt. 1 1911. A1 he uses to murder Solodso and Captain McCluskey represents his baptism in blood, the moment he crosses the line from civilian to criminal. The M1911. O1's 45 ACP chambering drives a 230-grain bullet at 830 feet per second through its 5-inch barrel, delivering 350 foot-pounds of fuel-proven stopping power. Weighing 2.4 pounds with a 7-round magazine, this single-action pistol served as America's military sidearm for over 70 years. But here's the genius of using this specific weapon in The Godfather. The M1911. Azul A1 was Michael's service pistol during World War II. By carrying this weapon into the restaurant, Michael transforms his military training into criminal application. The gun represents his past as a hero being corrupted into his future as a monster. Watch Pacino's handling during the restaurant scene. The draw is amateur, the grip is awkward, and the shots are point-blank panic fire. This isn't a professional hit. This is a man destroying his soul with mechanical precision. The heavy recoil of the 45 ACP is visible in Michael's wrists, each shot physically representing the moral impact of his choice. The M1911. A1 variant was introduced in 1924 with minor modifications to improve reliability and ergonomics. Over 2.7 million were manufactured by 1945, making it the most produced version of John Moses Browning's legendary design. The weapon became synonymous with American military might and, in Michael's hands, with American criminal power. The significance of this weapon extends beyond the film. The M1911. A1 represents calculated violence delivered through mechanical reliability. There's no second strike capability with a single action trigger. You either commit to the shot or you don't. Michael's decision to pull that trigger transforms him irrevocably. Original World War II. Airamo M1911. Inseparable. A1 pistols command $1,500 to $3,000, depending on manufacturer and condition, while modern reproductions sell for $700 to $1,200. The weapon represents affordable access to cinema and military history combined. Number 6. Smith & Wesson, Model 15, The Honest Man's Burden, Serpico, 1973. Number 6 brings us back to Frank Serpico, but this time with his official service weapon. The Smith & Wesson Model 15 combat masterpiece represents everything contradictory about being an honest cop in a corrupt department. This wasn't Serpico's choice. It was his burden. The Model 15 features a .38 special chambering that fires a 158-grain bullet at 870 feet per second through its 4-inch barrel, delivering 265 foot-pounds of stopping power. Weighing 34 ounces with a 6-round capacity, this K-frame revolver represented the NYPD's standard service weapon throughout the 1960s and 70s. Here's what made the Model 15 significant for law enforcement. The 4-inch barrel provided the perfect balance between accuracy and portability. The adjustable rear sight allowed officers to zero the weapon for their specific ammunition and shooting style. The target grade trigger broke cleanly for precision work, while the double action capability enabled rapid defensive fire. But Pacino's Serpico carries this weapon with visible contempt. The Model 15 represents the department that betrayed him. Every time he draws it, he's reminded that the same weapon protecting the public is carried by corrupt officers shaking down criminals. The gun becomes morally neutral, and that neutrality disgusts him. The Smith & Wesson K-frame design dated back to 1935, but the Model 15 designation wasn't applied until 1957, when Smith & Wesson switched to numerical model designations. Over 400,000 Model 15s were manufactured between 1957 and 1999, making it one of the most successful police service revolvers ever produced. Watch Pacino's interactions with this weapon throughout Serpico. He maintains it meticulously because professional competence demands it, but there's no affection in his maintenance. The Model 15 is a tool for a job that's destroying his idealism. The weapon's mechanical perfection contrasts it sharply with the department's moral corruption. The tragic irony is that the Model 15 couldn't save Serpico when he needed it most. During the shooting that ended his career, his service weapon was holstered. The gun he trusted more than his partners couldn't protect him from the partners he couldn't trust. Original NYPD-issued Smith & Wesson. Model D15 revolvers command $600 to $1,000 depending on condition and provenance, while standard commercial models sell for $400 to $700. Documented NYPD guns with service records bring premium prices for collectors. Number 5, Colt M733 Commando, the professional's tool, Heat, 1995. Before we reveal the top 5 weapons that defined Al Pacino's crime cinema legacy, hit that subscribe button if you're discovering the authentic firearms that built Hollywood's most explosive scenes. These aren't just movie props. They're the actual tools that professional criminals and lawmen chose when their lives depended on superior firepower. We're about to show you the weapons that redefined action cinema in the 1990s. Number 5 takes us to the weapon that represents professional competence meeting overwhelming force. Vincent Hanna's Colt M733. Commando in Heat isn't just a rifle. It's the physical manifestation of a cop who studied his enemies and armed himself accordingly. Heat presents Pacino as Vincent Hanna, an LAPD robbery homicide detective, hunting a crew of professional criminals led by Neil McCauley. The Colt M733 Commando he carries during the legendary downtown shootout represents a cop who refuses to be outgunned by professional criminals.
Not to hurt no one. We're here for the banks.
The M733 Commando features a 5.56 NATO chambering that fires a 62-grain M855 bullet at 2,900 feet per second through its 11.5-inch barrel, delivering 1,150 foot-pounds of devastating energy. Weighing 6.3 pounds with a 30-round magazine capacity, this compact assault rifle brought military-grade firepower to law enforcement operations. Here's what made the M733 revolutionary for police work. The collapsible stock allowed officers to deploy the weapon from patrol cars quickly. The shorter barrel maintained sufficient velocity for urban engagement distances, while improving maneuverability in tight spaces. The direct impingement gas system provided reliable cycling with minimal maintenance. The M733 was developed in 1984 specifically for special operations forces requiring compact firepower. The 11.5-inch barrel represented the minimum length that maintained acceptable terminal ballistics with 5.56 ammunition. Any shorter and the round failed to fragment reliably, reducing effectiveness. Pacino's Hanna deploys the M733 during the downtown shootout with practiced efficiency. Watch his magazine changes and ready positions. This isn't a cop playing soldier. This is a professional who studied his enemy's tactics and armed himself to win. The compact rifle allows him to move through cars and urban obstacles while maintaining superior firepower. The significance extends beyond the film. Heat's downtown shootout revolutionized how Hollywood depicted gunfights. The realistic sound design and tactical movement set new standards for authenticity. Pacino's handling of the M733 influenced an entire generation of action filmmakers. The Colt M733 Commando remains restricted to law enforcement and military sales, making civilian ownership nearly impossible. However, similar AR-15 pistols with 11.5-inch barrels and arm braces provide comparable configurations for civilian shooters, selling for $900 to $1,500 depending on manufacturer. Number 4, FNFNC, the bank robbery beast, Heat, 1995. Number 4 brings us to the weapon that redefined cinematic gunfights. While technically carried by Neil McCauley's crew, the FNFNC rifles dominate the Heat bank robbery shootout, where Pacino's character responds with overwhelming force. These weapons represent professional criminal firepower, meeting professional law enforcement response. Thus, FNFNC features the same 5.56 NATO, chambering as the M733, but with a 17.4-inch barrel that launches that 62-grain M855 bullet at 3,000 feet per second, delivering 1,230 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. Weighing 8.4 pounds with 30-round magazines, this Belgian-designed assault rifle represented military-grade reliability in criminal hands. Here's what made the FNC terrifying for law enforcement. The weapon's reliability under stress was legendary. The gas system featured a 3-position regulator that ensured function even with fouled or damaged components. The rate of fire cycled at 650 rounds per minute, allowing sustained suppressive fire that pinned down responding officers. The FNFNC was adopted by the Belgian military in 1979 and subsequently purchased by armed forces worldwide. Its design emphasized simplicity and reliability over technological innovation, making it the professional's choice when mechanical failure meant death. During Heat's downtown shootout, the FNC armed criminals demonstrate tactics that shocked audiences. They move in coordinated fire teams, use vehicles for cover, and employ suppressive fire to control the battlefield. Pacino's response with the M733 shows a cop who anticipated exactly this scenario and prepared accordingly. The sound design during this sequence deserves special mention. The distinctive report of the 5.56 rounds echoing through downtown Los Angeles creates psychological impact beyond the visual spectacle. Every crack of supersonic rounds reminds audiences that this isn't stylized action. This is documented tactical reality. The FNFNC remains restricted to military and law enforcement sales in the United States, with no legal civilian versions available. However, the related FNFNC's design influenced later Belgian firearms like the FN Scar, which are available in semi-automatic variants selling for $3,000 to $4,000. Number 3. Taurus PT 92. The Final Stand, Carlito's Way, 1993. At number 3, we have the weapon that represents impossible odds and inevitable tragedy. While Carlito Brigante primarily carries a Beretta 92F throughout most of Carlito's Way, several of the antagonists use Taurus PT 92 pistols, creating a weapon ecosystem that reveals the film's tragic hierarchy. The Taurus PT 92 features the same 9mm parabellum, chambering as the Beretta 92F. Firing that 115-grain bullet at 1,250 feet per second through its 5-inch barrel, delivering 399 foot-pounds of stopping power. Weighing 2.3 pounds with a 15-round magazine capacity, this Brazilian-manufactured pistol represents reverse-engineered excellence. Here's the fascinating story behind the PT-92. Taurus purchased Beretta's Brazilian manufacturing facility in 1980, acquiring all the tooling and expertise to produce Beretta 92 clones. The PT-92 improved on the original design with a frame-mounted safety that many shooters preferred over Beretta's slide-mounted system. The weapon offered 90% of the Beretta's performance at 60% of the cost. The PT-92's presence in Carlito's Way reveals economic hierarchy. Carlito carries the authentic Beretta because he can afford quality. His enemies carry Taurus clones because they're hungry criminals scratching for survival. The weapon choice tells you everything about relative power before a single shot is fired. Watch the Grand Central Station finale. Carlito's Beretta runs empty at the worst possible moment. The mechanical perfection that served him throughout the film fails him when he needs it most. Not through malfunction, but through capacity limitations. 15 rounds seemed like plenty until facing multiple enemies in a confined space. The Taurus PT-92 became popular with criminals and budget-conscious shooters throughout the 1980s and 90s precisely because it offered military-grade reliability without military-grade prices. Brazilian manufacturing kept costs low while maintaining acceptable quality control. The weapon represented accessible firepower for those who couldn't afford premium brands. Pacino's final moments in Carlito's Way reveal the tragedy of incomplete preparation. The Beretta served him faithfully, but survival required more than mechanical reliability. It required luck, and luck ran out at precisely the wrong moment. The empty pistol becomes a symbol of exhausted possibilities. Modern Taurus EBITC T-92 pistols sell for $400 to $550 new, while original 1980s and 90s production models command similar prices in good condition. The weapon represents affordable access to proven Beretta pattern reliability with minor improvements. Number 2. M1601 with M203, the Mansion Defense, Scarface, 1983. Number 2 brings us to the weapon that defined excessive firepower for an entire generation. Tony Montana's M16A1 with M203 grenade launcher attachment in Scarface represents paranoia transformed into overwhelming destructive capability. This isn't just a gun, it's a statement about empire built on violence. Scarface follows Pacino as Tony Montana, a Cuban refugee who builds a cocaine empire through ruthless violence. The M16A1 with M203 grenade launcher he uses during the mansion siege represents the ultimate expression of criminal firepower, meeting military-grade destruction. The M16A, A1's 5.56, NATO chambering fires a 55 grain, M193 ball round at 3,250 feet per second through its 20-inch barrel, delivering 1,302 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. The rifle weighs 7.9 pounds with a 30-round magazine, but adding the M203 grenade launcher increases weight to 11 pounds, while adding 40mm high explosive capability. Here's what made this combination absolutely devastating. The M16A1 provided sustained automatic fire at 700 to 950 rounds per minute, allowing Tony to suppress multiple attackers simultaneously. But the M203 grenade launcher transformed the weapon from suppressive tool to area destruction system. Each 40mm M406 high explosive round delivered a casualty radius of 5 meters, turning defensive positions into kill zones. The M203 was adopted by the U.S. military in 1969 as a replacement for the problematic M79 grenade launcher. By mounting the launcher under the rifle's barrel, soldiers maintained their primary weapon while gaining explosive capability. The single-shot break-action design allowed rapid reloading while keeping the system simple enough for field maintenance. Tony Montana's M16 with M203 becomes the physical manifestation of his character. The rifle represents sustained violence, while the grenade launcher represents disproportionate response. Tony doesn't just fight his enemies, he obliterates them with military ordnance. The weapon choice reveals his mindset: overwhelming force in response to any threat. Watch Pacino's handling during the mansion finale. The recoil of full auto fire barely affects him. He's so consumed by cocaine and rage that the physical feedback doesn't register. The M203's distinctive thump as he launches grenades punctuates his famous dialogue with explosive emphasis. The weapon becomes an extension of his fury. The cultural impact of this scene cannot be overstated. Tony Montana's M16 with M203 became the template for excessive movie firepower. Every action film since Scarface owes a debt to this scene's combination of charismatic performance and authentic military weaponry. Original M16 A1 rifles are restricted to law enforcement and military sales, but semi-automatic AR-15 variants sell for $800 to $1,500. M203 grenade launchers require federal destructive device registration and sell for $3,000 to $5,000 when legally transferable, with each 40mm grenade requiring separate registration and costing $25 to $200 depending on type. Number 1. M16 A1 with M203 grenade launcher. Say hello to my little friend, Scarface. Lat 1983. Here stands the firearm that made Al Pacino immortal. Tony Montana's M16A1 with M203 grenade launcher isn't just the most famous gun in Pacino's career, it's arguably the most quoted weapon scene in cinema history. This moment represents the pinnacle of paranoid excess meeting military-grade destruction. The scene deserves detailed analysis because it reveals everything about Tony Montana's character through his relationship with this weapon system. The M16A1 portion represents sustained violence, the ability to maintain continuous fire while facing overwhelming odds. But the M203 grenade launcher represents disproportionate response, the willingness to use explosive force against individual targets. Let's talk technical capabilities that made this combination so devastating. The M16. A1's automatic fire mode cycled at 750 rounds per minute, emptying a 30-round magazine in approximately 2.4 seconds. But Tony maintains fire discipline, using controlled bursts rather than mag dumps. Even in his cocaine-fueled rage, He demonstrates tactical competence. The M203's 40mm grenades came in multiple variants. The M406 high explosive round contained 32 grams of composition B, explosive with a casualty radius of 5 meters and injury potential out to 15 meters. The weapon's leaf sight allowed accurate fire out to 350 meters, though Tony uses it at point-blank range for maximum psychological impact. Here's what most viewers never understood about this scene. The SM-16 with M203 represents Tony's military-industrial complex fantasy. He's a street criminal who armed himself with military ordnance because overwhelming firepower is the only security paranoia recognizes. Every weapon system he installed in his mansion represents escalating defensive paranoia. The scene's dialogue has entered cultural immortality. Say hello to my little friend transforms a weapon into a character. Tony addresses the M16 with M203 like a trusted companion, revealing his isolation. His guns have become his only reliable relationships. The weapon isn't just a tool, it's his friend, his security, his identity. Pacino's physical performance deserves recognition. The full auto muzzle climb of the M16A1 creates visible recoil, but Tony fights it through sheer determination. Each M203 launch creates distinctive recoil that Pacino absorbs while maintaining aggressive forward movement. The performance combines authentic weapons, handling with theatrical intensity. The production used genuine M16, A1 rifles converted to full automatic blank fire, with the functional M203 grenade launchers firing pyrotechnic effects rather than explosive ordnance. The commitment to authentic weapons rather than obvious mock-ups created visceral realism that audiences recognized, even if they couldn't articulate why the scene felt different. The cultural impact extends far beyond the film. Tony Montana's M16 with M203 became the template for video game protagonists, action figures, and countless imitations. The weapon represents a specific type of masculine fantasy, overwhelming force in the hands of a man who refuses to surrender. But the scene's tragedy is that the weapon ultimately fails Tony. Despite military-grade firepower, despite grenade launchers and mountains of cocaine, he dies riddled with bullets. The weapon that was supposed to make him invincible became a symbol of how firepower alone can't compensate for tactical disadvantage. Tony's little friend couldn't save him from the consequences of his choices. For collectors and enthusiasts, the M16, A1 with M203 remains the holy grail of movie guns. Original M16. A1 rifles require law enforcement credentials or Class 3 dealer licenses, while the M203 requires federal destructive device registration. Legal ownership of both components in full auto configuration represents 5-figure investments and extensive federal paperwork. However, semi-automatic AR-15 variants with replica M203 launchers provide visual approximations for 10% of the cost. Numerous manufacturers produce AR-15s chambered in 5.56 NATO for $800 to $1,500, while replica M203 launchers that fire 37mm flares sell for $300 to $600 without requiring federal registration. The M16A1 with M203 and Scarface represents the apotheosis of Al Pacino's screen violence. From Michael Corleone's reluctant M1911A1 to Tony Montana's embraced military assault rifle, Pacino's characters evolve from men corrupted by violence to men defined by it. The weapons tell the story of American crime cinema's escalation, from personal betrayal to industrial-scale warfare. Al Pacino's firearms reveal a truth that transcends individual films. The weapons an actor chooses define not just their character's capabilities, but their moral evolution. From Serpico's betrayed Model 36 to Tony Montana's embraced M16 with M03, we've watched violence transform from necessary evil to defining identity. Pacino succeeded where other actors failed because he understood that authenticity requires respecting the weapon's historical and tactical significance. He didn't just point guns at cameras, he studied how professionals carried them, maintained them, and employed them under stress. That commitment to authenticity transformed steel and gunpowder into character development. From The Godfather's reluctant violence to Scarface's embraced excess, from Heat's professional competence to Carlito's Way's tragic inevitability, Pacino's weapons tell the complete story of American crime cinema. Each gun represents a choice, a compromise, or a corruption. The evolution from revolvers to assault rifles mirrors cinema's escalation from intimate betrayal to spectacular warfare. These 10 firearms aren't just movie props. They're the tools that defined 4 decades of crime cinema and established Al Pacino as the most intense gunfighter Hollywood has ever produced. When you understand the weapons, you understand the characters. When you understand the characters, you understand why Pacino's performances remain the gold standard against which all crime cinema is measured. Which Al Pacino weapon defined your image of crime cinema? Drop your thoughts below and tell us which firearm captured your imagination. Subscribe for more deep dives into the authentic weapons that built Hollywood legends. Because the real stories behind the guns are always more powerful than the myths. Remember, in the hands of Al Pacino, firearms become instruments of character transformation, and that transformation changed cinema forever.